Time now for Weather Nation, and one big top story that we've seen the last few days has been the volcano in Iceland.
It has been showing some activities since this weekend with Bardabunga, the specific volcano we're talking about, showed signs of activity but no eruption yet, even though they considered this past weekend a little bit of a false alarm, Rhonda.
Yeah, and that's actually good news for the folks there in Iceland, that false alarm. There were flights delayed, and kind of reminds us of what happened in 2010 when all those flights were delayed going in and out of Europe for several days. Now, with us now, we have on the phone with us Thor Thordarson, who is a volcanologist there in Iceland. So thank you so much for joining us today via Skype.
Oh, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, if you don't mind, my big question has always been, when you think of volcanoes, you think of the big eruption, the big Hollywood scene when there's lava in the air and you know, fireworks going on. Is that this kind of volcano?
Well, at the moment, it shows a quite a different image. It's actually quite calm and capped by a very nice white glacier. But overnight, that might change. It can turn into an erupting volcano at any time.
The seismic activity around this volcano has a lot of people on high alert. Is an eruption imminent or not necessarily?
At the moment, no. The seismic activity, or the earthquakes that we see at the moment, are thought to represent a dike or a sheet-like intrusion which is making its way through the crust at depths between 8 and 12 kilometers. So it's still got quite a ways to go before it reaches the surface.
Right. Now, what our viewers are seeing on the screen right now are a few of this, I guess, indications of seismic activity. Have you guys started evacuating folks who are around that particular volcano, or does anybody actually live there?
No one lives there. There are several huts around which are used during the summer, both by Icelanders traveling in the highlands and tourists. The area has been completely evacuated, except for a few scientists which are putting in instruments. And that's just a safety measure. If this volcano erupts, it might erupt through the glacier. And in doing so, it could generate flash flood in some of the rivers that run from the glacier. And those rivers go by some popular tourist areas.
And Thor, if, say, this volcano were to erupt, what kind of impacts would the eruption have locally and internationally?
It's a big question. No easy answers there, I can tell you. It depends on the magnitude of the eruption, and also depends on whether it actually erupts under the ice or whether it erupts beyond the margins of the ice, like the scenario is pointing towards at the moment. It could probably generate quite an explosive eruption to begin with, which could cause some disruption to air traffic and produce eruption plumes that might reach about 10, 12 kilometers or so. Whether they reach Europe, that remains to be seen. But it also could, because there's a very big dike, and there's a possibility that this might be a much bigger eruption and much longer lasting eruption. And if that would be the case, then it could cause quite a disruption.
All right. Well, Thor, we thank you so much for joining us today. A lot of very good information. The bottom line is we're all going to keep an eye on Iceland over the next few days.